Spindle is a level 302 solo wilderness boss located in 29 Wildy. She drops the most valuable drop in the wilderness, the Voidwaker gem, worth 47 mil right now. This means Spindle is over 5 mil GP per hour with good stats and gear, making it the second most profitable wilderness boss after Venenatis. Spindle is weak to crush and ranged attacks, although using melee is a little more effective than ranging. To be able to fight Spindle, you need to have completed the medium wilderness achievement diaries. For Spindle, there's some recommended stats. Spindle can use all 3 attack styles, meaning you should have at least 43 prayer for all of the protection prayers. 70 plus prayer is recommended though, to use piety or rigor. Being a solo boss, I recommend having at least 70 hit points and defense, especially to survive PKs. You should have at least 70 attack and strength if you're meleeing, and at least 70 ranged if you're ranging, but I would suggest at least 80. Spindle is located in the Web Chasm north of the Graveyard of Shadows. There's a few ways to get there. My recommended way there is using a Games Necklace teleport to the Corporal Beast and run north. The Karalanga teleport from the Ancient Spellbook is another decent option, and from the teleport you run north. This does require Desert Treasure 1 though, and it's about the same distance as using a Games Necklace. The fastest way there is with a Hunter Skill Cape teleport to the Black Chinchompers and then run southeast. Now I'll cover the gear and inventory setups for Spindle, and I'll be showing the melee setup first and then the range. So for melee, the best weapons to use are the Ursine Chainmace, Vigorous Chainmace, then the Inquisitor's Mace, Soul Reaper Axe, Bludgeon, Zombie Axe, Hasta, and Cudgel. Basically, you need a crush weapon. And if you're using the Ursine or Vigorous Chainmace, I would suggest only using about 1300 ether on it, since you do lose it all when you die. In terms of armor, this is what I recommend. On the left is the minimum gear setup with a Sarachnis Cudgel, and on the right is the max setup off task, without risking too much. For this setup, you will need Trauva Parchments for the Cape and Defender, since you do lose them above 20 wilderness if you die. Here are 2 example inventory setups for meleeers. You need something to defeat the Spiderlings while you're fighting Spindle, and you should bring darts to do that. Along with darts, you'll need either a Din's Bulwark, Chinchompers, or a multi-target ancient spell to defeat the Spiderlings when they're grouped together. You can also bring runes for Blood Barrage to heal off the Spiderlings. You'll need something to cure poison, a looting bag, a teleport out of 30 wilderness, and you can bring Blighted Vengeance sacks if you're anti-PKing. For rangers, the best weapons to use are the Webweaver bow, crossbow, then crossbows down to the rune crossbow, but I would recommend at least the dragon crossbow. It's strongly recommended to use a Webweaver or crossbow though, since you won't do a lot of damage with low tier ranged equipment. Now I'm showing 2 gear setups for rangers. On the left is the minimum setup, and on the right is a budget max setup to minimize your risk. You can get away with bringing an Arbor's Accumulator to save money on the Trauva Parchment, which is used to save the Assembler in Deep Wilderness. Those boots are mixed hide boots, which provide a range bonus and decent defense for a cheap price. In your inventory as a ranger, you'll want something to cure poison, a teleport out of 30 wild, and either a Din's Bulwark, Chinchompers, or Blighted Ice Sacks to defeat the Spiderlings. You can bring any charged Dragonstone jewelry to leave the wilderness below level 30, but a cheap option is a Royal Seed Pod. Now I'm going to go through all of Spindle's mechanics so you can learn how to avoid them. Every 4 attacks that Spindle does, she moves to a different area of the room. If you're in melee distance, Spindle will use melee attacks, and you should always protect from melee if you're using melee. If you're ranging, Spindle starts the fight by doing 8 ranged attacks, then 8 magic attacks, and continues that cycle, so you'll need to swap between Protect Range and Protect Mage. Occasionally, Spindle will launch a web ball towards you, and when it hits, it turns into a web on the ground. While you're inside this web, you take rapid hits of 3 damage, and your prayer and run energy drains. So when that web ball gets launched towards you, run out of the way. Throughout the battle, Spindle spawns Spiderlings. They're very weak, but they do drain your prayer. The more spiderlings there are in the room, the more Spindle can hit through your protection prayers. So it's strongly recommended to defeat the spiderlings as soon as they spawn. You can kill them with darts, a Din's Bulwark, Chinchompers, or multi-target ancient spells. Now I'll take you through a full battle with Spindle so you can see how it works. Before you start, you should always have PK Skull Prevention active so that you don't accidentally skull in the wilderness. Upon entering Spindle's lair, you should instantly target her if you're using melee to get in melee distance. You can see that Spindle instantly spawned the spiderlings, so I switch to my darts and I defeat them. Then I return back to fighting Spindle, dealing huge damage with the Ursine Chain Mace. Spindle moves across the room after 4 attacks, then launches a web ball at me, so I move out of the way so I don't get damaged. Spindle then spawns some more spiderlings, then I return back to defeating Spindle. As I mentioned, Spindle is the second most profitable wilderness boss, giving over 5 mil GP per hour if you're on rate for the Voidwaker gem. The average loot is about 100k, with a chance of the pet at a rate of 1 in 2800. Spindle has a range of highly valuable drops, like the Dragon Pickaxe, 60 grimy Snapdragons, the Treasonous Ring, and more. Being such a profitable boss, Spindle is often flooded with PKers. The good news is that Spindle is in a singles area, so you can't get piled by a team here, although it is still handy to know some escape tactics. Spindle is in below level 30 wilderness, meaning you can teleport out if a PKer comes. However, there is a teleport delay if you haven't completed the Wilderness Hard Diaries, so I would strongly recommend doing those if you can. Your best bet when a PKer teleblocks you is to exit as fast as possible and run away to try to gain a gap between you and the PKer. It helps to use Protect from Magic plus a magic boosting prayer when the PKer is trying to freeze you. Your magic defense is partially based on your magic level, so increasing your magic with prayer boosts your magic defense. One very important thing to keep in mind is do not run east. That's a multi-combat area, so you should stay on the western side of the fence. If you brought a Din's Bulwark to Spindle, you should definitely put that on while you're running. Anyway, that's my complete Spindle guide for Old School. Be sure to leave a like if you learned something today, and subscribe for more Old School content. Thanks for watching.